The laughter around the polished oak dining table hit me like glass shattering against stone. My sister leaned back in her designer dress, swirling wine in her glass as her eyes flicked to me like I was nothing. "She's just a waitress," she said, her voice dripping with mockery, loud enough for everyone, including her husband, to hear. Forks froze midair. My chest tightened, heat rushing to my face, but I forced myself to sip water calmly, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Her husband, Daniel, smirked, clearly enjoying the spectacle. "A waitress, huh? Guess some people never outgrow mediocrity," he chuckled, leaning back like he owned the world. The room vibrated with suppressed chuckles and whispered judgment. I set my glass down slowly, my voice even but sharp enough to slice through the smug air. "Better a waitress than a parasite living off his wife's family money," I said. The color drained from Daniel's face for a flicker of a second before he forced a laugh, but the tension was already there, crawling across the table like smoke. My sister's face hardened. "Don't talk about him like that," she hissed, her knuckles tightening around her glass. "We all know what you are. You scrape plates, take orders, and survive off tips. You should be grateful you're even sitting here with us." The room fell silent, eyes bouncing between us, the tension thick enough to choke on. My nails dug into my palm under the table, but I didn't flinch. I wanted to say more, to crush her smug little smirk, but before the venom boiling in my chest spilled out, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. The dining room door swung open. He walked in. Tall, commanding, the kind of presence that made air bend around him. My husband, Ethan. His tailored suit was midnight black, his silver watch glinting under the chandelier as he slipped off his coat and handed it to the stunned house staff. Conversations died instantly. Daniel's smirk faltered. My sister's confidence cracked into confusion. Ethan's gaze swept the table, cold, sharp, powerful. And then it landed on me. And in that moment, everyone finally understood he wasn't just any man. Because the man they thought was a mystery in my life was the billionaire no one dared cross. And what he did next left every single one of them speechless. Ethan's shoes clicked against the marble floor with a rhythm that made my sister's bravado evaporate. The dining room, seconds ago buzzing with laughter and arrogance, was now silent. Every breath caught midair. My sister's smirk twisted into something brittle as she forced a laugh. "Oh, you finally decided to join us?" Her tone wavered. Not the same confidence she'd used when mocking me. Ethan didn't even glance at her. His eyes stayed locked on mine, softening just slightly as if he wanted the world to know who truly mattered at that table. Then, with a quiet authority that carried more weight than any raised voice, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to my forehead. The room erupted in whispers. Daniel's smirk vanished. His wine glass clinked against the table as his fingers trembled slightly, and I saw it, the first fracture in his carefully curated arrogance. My sister's face froze, her jaw tightening. Ethan straightened, turned his head slowly toward her, and spoke with razor-sharp precision. "Funny," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "A moment ago, I heard you call my wife just a waitress." He let the word hang like poison in the air. "Do you have any idea what she's survived, what she's built, or what she means to me?" The weight of his words pressed down on the table. No one dared to speak. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to recover, his voice thin. "We were just joking, Ethan. Don't take it so... joking." Ethan cut him off, his jaw tightening. "There's no joke in belittling someone because they chose honest work. You sit there living off money you didn't earn, and you mock. The one person in this room who's had the courage to work for every single thing she has." His gaze burned into Daniel, and Daniel actually shifted in his seat like a schoolboy caught lying. My heart hammered in my chest. I'd spent years swallowing insults, pretending not to notice when my family ranked me lowest, letting them chip away at me. And now, someone stood beside me. Not just anyone, but a man whose power commanded entire industries, and he was defending me with a fire none of them could extinguish. My sister's voice cracked through the silence, sharp but nervous. "You can't speak to us like that. This is our home, Ethan. You're a guest." Ethan's lips curved into a cold smile. "Guest?" His hand brushed against my shoulder as he leaned slightly forward, his tone like ice. "I'm never a guest where my wife is disrespected. And let me make one thing clear. You may call this your home, but you live under a roof you didn't buy. You eat food you didn't pay for. Everything around you, from the table you're sitting at to the car you drove in, was propped up by borrowed wealth and false pride. The only real strength in this room is sitting right here." He nodded to me, and my breath caught in my throat. The silence deepened. The staff, lingering at the edges of the room, avoided eye contact, but couldn't hide their stolen glances of awe. My sister's hand shook slightly as she reached for her wine glass. "You don't know what you're talking about," she muttered, though her voice had lost all weight. Ethan tilted his head, studying her like a man examining a broken piece of glass. "No, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You spent years mocking your own blood, but now you've made the mistake of doing it in front of me. And believe me, I don't forget." Daniel finally tried to salvage some pride. He leaned forward, forcing a smirk. "You think money makes you powerful? You think your suits and your name give you the right to humiliate us?" Ethan's chuckle was soft, almost amused, but it carried more menace than any anger. "No," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Respect does, loyalty does, love does. And unfortunately for you, Daniel, those are things you wouldn't recognize if they sat across from you." A long pause hung heavy in the air. Then Ethan turned back to me, his tone softening only for me. "You don't have to stay here," he said quietly, almost tenderly. "You don't have to let them chip away at you anymore." His hand brushed mine under the table, a silent anchor. And for the first time, I felt it, a surge of something stronger than shame, stronger than anger, vindication, power. They'd laughed, they'd mocked, they'd called me less. But in this moment, their fear, their silence, their shattered pride was mine. My sister's eyes darted around, desperate for someone to back her up. No one moved. Daniel opened his mouth, then shut it, his tongue stuck between words and cowardice. Ethan finally stepped back, his voice even, final. "This dinner is over. If my wife isn't respected in this house, then neither am I. And trust me, you'll want me respected." His words dropped like a verdict. He extended his hand toward me. Without hesitation, I placed mine in his. We stood together, two against a room full of broken pride and silence. As we walked toward the door, the sound of our footsteps was the only noise. Behind me, I could feel my sister's world cracking, her power collapsing under the weight of the truth she'd never wanted to face. The woman she mocked was the one holding all the cards now, and that was just the beginning. The door shut behind us with a heavy thud, cutting off the suffocating silence of the dining room. The cool night air wrapped around me, sharp against my burning skin. Ethan still held my hand, his grip firm, steady, as though he knew my knees were moments from buckling under the weight of everything that had just unfolded. My chest rose and fell rapidly, not from shame anymore, but from adrenaline, the kind that makes your blood hum and your heart scream for more. We reached his car, a sleek black Rolls-Royce parked out front, its polished surface reflecting the glow of the chandelier spilling out of the mansion's windows. A butler rushed to open the door, his eyes wide, as if he too had sensed the storm brewing inside. Ethan didn't let go of my hand until I was seated. Only when he slid into the driver's seat beside me did the silence between us finally break. "You handled that better than most," he said softly, though the edge of anger still clung to his voice. But you shouldn't have had to handle it at all. I swallowed hard, staring out the window as the house shrank behind us. They've always looked at me like that, I whispered. Like I'm less than them. Tonight wasn't new, it was just louder. His knuckles whitened around the steering wheel, his jaw tight. Then it ends here. Tonight was the last time they'll get to speak to you that way. His words were not a promise. They were a sentence. And I believed him. The city lights blurred past as he drove, his silence heavy with thought. Finally, he pulled into the driveway of our penthouse tower, the building's glass facade gleaming against the night. As the elevator carried us upward, the quiet stretched until he finally turned to me, his expression unreadable. I didn't want them to know who I am yet, he admitted. I wanted us to live simply, to keep your life yours, not tangled in my world. But they forced my hand. And now? His eyes darkened. Now they'll learn. I felt a shiver run through me, not fear, but anticipation. For once, it wasn't me on the defensive. For once, the ones who had spent years humiliating me were about to understand what it felt like when power turned its gaze on them. The next morning began like fire catching dry leaves. My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from my mother, from distant cousins, even from my sister. I didn't answer. Each message bled desperation. We need to talk. Please, can we meet? It was a misunderstanding. I laughed bitterly. For years they had dismissed me, shoved me to the corner of every room, laughed at my struggles. But the moment they realized who Ethan really was, the moment their smug pedestal cracked, they wanted to talk. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping his coffee, watching me scroll through their desperate pleas. They'll beg, he said calmly. They'll pretend to apologize, but they're not sorry for how they treated you. They're only sorry they got caught doing it in front of me. I set the phone down, my hands trembling, not with weakness, but with something sharper. So, what do we do? I asked, my voice steady. His eyes locked on mine, and there was no softness left in them, only steel. We show them what happens when you underestimate the woman they thought they could break. That afternoon, he made a call. One call. And by evening, the ripple had already spread. My brother-in-law's company, a business propped up by investments Ethan's firm had once quietly approved, was under review. Contracts that once gave him comfort were suddenly uncertain. The investors he bragged about at every party grew cold, cautious. My sister's smugness turned to frantic phone calls, which turned into unanswered voicemails. I watched it unfold with a strange mix of disbelief and satisfaction. Ethan wasn't loud, he wasn't cruel. He was precise. He never needed to raise his voice, never needed to announce revenge. He simply shifted the ground beneath their feet until the ones who mocked me were the ones scrambling for balance. But the true moment came 3 nights later. My sister showed up at our penthouse. Her makeup was smudged, her composure shattered. She clutched her designer purse like a lifeline, her hands trembling. "Please," she said, her voice breaking the second Ethan opened the door. "You can't let this happen. Daniel's business is collapsing. The investors are pulling out. We'll lose everything." I stood behind Ethan, arms folded, my heart pounding but steady. For years, she had looked at me like I was beneath her. And now, she stood on the edge of ruin, begging for mercy. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked at me. His silence was intentional. It was my choice. For once, I had the power. The weight of years of humiliation pressed against my ribs, begging for release. My sister's eyes locked onto mine, glassy with desperation. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We need your help. Please, you're my sister." I took a slow step forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor. "Sister," I repeated softly, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. Do you know how many times I sat at your table listening to you remind me I was just a waitress? Do you know how many nights I cried after you laughed in my face? My voice grew sharper, stronger, fueled by the fire I'd buried for years. You never treated me like a sister. You treated me like dirt. And now you want me to save you. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she was speechless. Ethan's hand brushed against my back, grounding me, steadying me. Your answer? He asked me quietly. I met my sister's trembling gaze, her entire world hanging on my next words. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I felt free. I looked at my sister standing in the doorway, her mascara streaking down her cheeks, her voice shaking with desperation. For years, I had been the one shrinking in corners, silencing my pain, swallowing her mockery just to keep the peace. But tonight, the balance had shifted. Tonight, she needed me more than I ever needed her. You called me just a waitress, I said, my voice steady, slicing through the silence like glass. You told your husband, your friends, even strangers that I was beneath you. You paraded me as your family's shame. And now you want me to fix your mess? She reached out a trembling hand as though she could pull me back into her world. Please, I didn't mean it. I was wrong, okay? I was jealous. I let out a sharp laugh. Jealous? I asked. Jealous of what? The waitress who had nothing? Or jealous of the woman who stood up when everyone else bowed down to your arrogance? Her hand faltered mid-air, and she pulled it back as if burned. Ethan's presence behind me was unshakable, his silence more powerful than any threat. He wanted this to be my choice, not his revenge, mine. I took one step closer to her. My voice dropped lower, calmer, yet every word carried the weight of years I'd buried. Do you know what respect feels like, Sarah? It's earned. It's given to people who carry themselves with dignity. And you never gave it, not to me, not to anyone who didn't serve your ego. I shook my head slowly. And now, you've lost it. That's something even my husband's billions can't buy back for you. Her knees nearly buckled, and for the first time in my life, I saw her powerless. Please, she whispered again, a broken echo of the woman who once smirked at my pain. I straightened, lifting my chin, my heart pounding like a drum inside my chest. No, I said firmly. You wanted me invisible. You wanted me humiliated. You wanted me small. But I'm not small anymore, and I will never, ever let you use me again. Her lips quivered, but no words came. She turned, stumbling toward the elevator. Her pride shattered, her empire crumbling faster than she could gather the pieces. When the door slid shut behind her, the silence in the penthouse felt electric. My shoulders finally loosened, my lungs filling with air I hadn't realized I was holding. Ethan wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close, his voice soft in contrast to the storm that had just passed. You didn't just stand up to her? Tonight, he murmured. You reclaimed yourself. I leaned into him, my heart still racing but lighter than it had felt in years. For once, I whispered back. I don't feel like just a waitress. I feel like me. And that's enough. Ethan kissed the top of my head, his voice steady. You were always more than enough. It just took them losing everything to finally see it. We stood there together, the city lights blazing outside the window, 1,000 stories below us. I thought about all the years of humiliation, the endless nights I felt like I didn't belong. And now, the very people who made me feel that way were the ones scrambling, powerless in the shadow of the woman they tried to break. That night, I didn't just walk away from my sister's cruelty. I walked into my own strength. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was victory. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't shouting or fighting or destroying. It's simply standing tall while those who once looked down on you finally realize they'll never look down again.